Hey, songwriters, it is week 6, and this week we are talking about time signatures. Time signatures are super important to understand well. They are the backbone of every single song, especially when we are playing with other musicians. If we don't have that steady tempo going in the background, no musicians can work together, and everything's going to fall apart, and our songs aren't going to work. So in this video, we are going to learn to count especially the commonly used time signatures, the ones that we hear all of the time. And we're also going to talk about some of the rarer ones and how we use those creatively. So let's go ahead and start with the really basic question of what is a time signature? And the time signature is a piece of musical notation that is going to tell musicians what to expect from the rhythmic organization of a song. So the way that this is explained most of the time is that you'll see this number has the top number and the bottom number, and everybody always says the top number is how many beats per measure and the bottom number is what type of note gets the beat. And that's true, but it misses a little bit of the nuance of this, which we're going to explain as we go through this lesson. So if we look at 4/4 though, it is correct, right? There's 4 beats in a measure and their quarter note gets the beat. So every single measure we expect this grouping of 4 quarter notes. That's correct. So let's talk about the common time signatures before we go into these in a little more depth. And so we kind of have 2 major distinctions of time signatures. So the first one is duple, which is focused on packets of 2. So 4/4 and 3/4 are the most common ones that you'll see here. And these have this really strong emphasis on 2. So 4/4 has that 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 3/4 is a little bit weirder. It doesn't feel like maybe 3 would fit into 4, but the important part of 3/4 is that you have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, right? So it's actually worth thinking about 3/4 has as emphasis on these eighth note subdivisions that we're breaking each count into 2 separate counts. So we have that 2 packet. The other one is triple, and triple, as you might be able to guess, has an emphasis on packets of 3. And we see these typically as 8 on the bottom ones. And so this is my main complaint with everybody's go-to description of top number tells you how many in a measure, bottom number tells you what note gets the beat, because it misses this idea of the important differences are duple or triple. Duple times have 4 on the bottom, triple times have 8 on the bottom in most cases. But those packets of 3, right, we'll see 3/8, 6/8, 9/8, 12/8. So these count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every third beat, we have that emphasis. Let's look at these a little bit more. So duple, right? Emphasis on the packets of 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have these yellow ones that we see. These are going to be hit a little bit harder. They're going to be accented. And sometimes you'll see 2/4 with the accent on the 1s and 3s. Sometimes you'll see it with the accents on the 2s and 4s. That just depends genre by genre. But the important thing is that in both of those scenarios, it is working with packets of 2. Now, 4/4 is what we hear in a huge amount of music. And there's no problem with writing most songs in 4/4. That is great. There's musicians that go their entire career writing in 4/4, and it's never a problem. So don't feel like because we have this whole video and we're talking about different time signatures and we're talking about 4/4 being the most common one, that you need to avoid 4/4 if you want to be like unique or original, right? There's so many different ways to set yourself apart. So there's no problem with sticking to 4/4. We just want to talk about the other options because they are cool to use. So triple, 6/8 is a good example of this, and we see those packets of 3s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we get that accent every third beat. So using time signatures creatively gets a little bit trickier. So there's a few things that I pulled out here that I like to do that can really make a good use of a different time signature. So one of these is to switch to a different time signature to make a section stand out. So if your whole song is in 4, maybe you want the bridge to really, really pop. And so the bridge, you make a switch. You go jump to 6/8. Maybe even go to an odd time signature like a 5/8 or something that we'll talk about in a second. You can also use time signatures to break yourself out of a rut, right? If you feel like, oh, I've written 5 songs and they've all been in 4/4 and they're starting to feel a little bit similar to me, well, just try it out. say, what does this sound like if I force this into one time signature or another? And you'll find that with different feels, you'll want to accompany those with different musical styles, which is good. It's a good way to just experiment with new sounds. You can also add odd bars to highlight special lyrics. And this is something that songwriters are notorious for doing this, that they'll write the lyrics and they'll have them exactly how they want. And then you'll get in with a band and they're like, are you adding an extra bar here? Are you leaving out a beat here? And you can kind of do this on purpose where you custom fit the tempo of a song to really highlight the lyrics and really just be tailor fit to what's going on there. But why we got to be aware of that is because if you are doing this without being conscious of it, and you go into work with a band, if you don't tell them to look out for it, it's a place where they can make mistakes, and it can ruin this special moment that you've crafted just because you might not have been aware that something odd was happening there. And you can just use an odd time signature that will make your song feel a little bit more unpredictable. If that's what you're going for, that's a great use of odd time signatures. So let's go ahead. I'm going to switch programs real quick, and we're going to talk about odd time signatures and talk about how we can create our own odd time signature. So this is one of my favorite ways for thinking about odd time signatures. And first off, an odd time signature is just anything that is out of those common ones. If we're dealing with packets of 3, isn't a multiple of 3. If we're dealing with packets of 2, isn't a multiple of 2, right? We have some weird stuff going on. So the way I like to think about this is in these packet verbiage. So let's just go ahead and say, if I wanted to write in 7/8, what would we do there? So when I see 7/8, what I think is that 7 is each measure we have to get to 7 counts, and 8 is telling me, well, we've got an emphasis on packets of 3, so we probably want to highlight that 3. So what I would do is maybe say, there's a lot of different ways we can get to 7. We could get to 7 as 3 and 3 and 1, and what this would feel like would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. So that would be the feel for that 3 and 3 and 1. Now that's not the only way we could get to 7. We could get to 7 by going 3 and 2 and 2. So what does that sound like? That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. So that could also be a 7/8 groove. Either of those work. You just have to make sure that you're communicating that to other musicians you're playing with, or else this is going to be a point of confusion. I'm going to put a link to this in the lesson notes, and please come play with this. I think it's a really fun, it's a really good exercise to practice your counting, and a good way to wrap your head around what different time signatures could sound like, right? We could put any numbers in here. We could try to write in 24 if we wanted to. We could write in 13/8, 17/8, right? And put those together. Now they're going to be complex, but it's going to be a good exercise in memory, and maybe you'll come up with something really, really cool that fits a song that you're writing really well. So we'll wrap up the video there. I hope this was helpful. I hope maybe some of you try to experiment with some odd time signatures or just new time signatures that you haven't hit before in your songs. And I will see you guys in the next video.